MP. And then we have some officers, which I'll read out for those of you who may know, or they may be your MPs. James Sunderland MP, Sharon Hodgson, James Daly, Jane Hunt, Sally Ann Hart, Catherine McKinnell, Christian Wakeford, Baroness Newland, Flick Drummond, and Teresa Villiers have all agreed to be officers of the all-party group. So it continues to be a very well-supported all-party group, and it's a very important issue. I shall just report for the minutes that Teresa Villiers MP was just saying, and we agreed to write to Mel Stride, the Secretary of State at DWP, about this, is that our productivity problem as a country, there are various facets to it. One could well be the number of people in the NHS waiting this, but she wanted to place on record her concern that it could well be the number of people in their 50s, late 50s, who are out of the workplace because they are providing grandparent daycare to fill the gaps in the childcare that we have in this country. And I think it's a very good point, well made. So I've agreed to write to the Secretary of State, DWP, about that, which I will do later on in the week. So welcome along to our meeting, and that's updated you on the AGM. This is, as you know, all part of Childcare Early Education. This week is a special week because we're celebrating Childcare Early Education Week. This year the theme is Fund the Early Years, Fund Their Future. Snappy title. We've had a good start to the week. There's some very good coverage already. So thank you to Connect for their help with that. We've got very good coverage in Nursery World, which has already led to people writing to me with their thoughts and suggestions. And early involvement we've had from councils as well, which is great. You all know this, but let me say it for the record. Early years clearly vital part of the child's education. I always declare my interest in that. I'm married to an early years worker, and so I hear about this at work and at home in stereo. And we know that early years education has got focusing on delivering the best outcomes for children. We know that internationally the UK has the second lowest level of government investment in early years, but the highest level of investment from parents. And so parents have every right to ask for the best. And we know that that's what the early education professional seeks to provide, but they can't do it on thin air for nothing forever. So if you are wishing to tweet about today's meeting, you can do so. You have to follow us on Twitter, obviously, APPG Early Years, and the hashtag is CEEAPPG. Today, I'm going to be speaking to several expert practitioners and providers in the early years sector. They are a combination of in the room and online. So Purnima Tanuku is Chief Executive of the National Day Nurseries Association, who will talk about their early years campaign. Julie Hyde, Director of External Regulatory Affairs at NCFE, who will speak from the workforce development perspective. Catherine McLeod is Chief Executive of Dingley's Promise, an organisation the APPG works closely with, who campaigns tirelessly on the issue of SEND in the early years, so welcome. Cheryl Hadland, who's founder and managing director of Top Day Nurseries, Aspire Training Team, and the Hadland Care Group. We've got a big focus on sustainability work. So let's crack on. We've got an hour and we have to be finished within that time. Could each panel member maybe that I've just introduced, let's start with you, Purnima, just sort of introduce your organisation, and I know that Purnima, you're going to show a little campaign video that you've been working on. Is it starring yourself?
Yes.
Excellent news. Right, so over to you, Purnima. Very welcome. Belated Happy New Year. If you say what you want to say and then introduce your video, we will play it.
Thank you very much, Chair, and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining today. And I'm going to start on a positive note because, as you know, recruitment retention is a huge crisis in early years. And as a national organisation representing their nurseries and their workforce across UK, we started this campaign a few months ago, and I'm delighted to say we have 80,000 people who are supporting this campaign. That ranging from government departments to all three nations' governments. And we are second stage of campaign is to promote this through politicians as well. The main aim of this is to really raise awareness of the importance of early education. And NDNA is a national organisation representing day nurseries and their workforce across UK. And this is something we wanted to share with you, and it's already on social media and you can access it on our website. And this is to really encourage the fantastic work that is going on day in, day out in earlier settings across the country. And that is something that we really need to celebrate. Most importantly, encourage people to come and join the profession as well. So if I can ask you to please to show the video, please, Sophie.
Sorry. That was not. Hold on, team.
Sorry.
We're just clearing the deck so you can see the video.
And everyone, can we see the video? Sorry.
You've got to clear that meeting chair. Okay. Let me rewind it.
So, how would you describe your day?
Wow.
I've worked in early years for 2 years now, and so far my experience has been amazing. Right from the beginning, I went to university and did a degree in early years and education studies. After uni, I didn't go into teaching, I went into makeup. I worked my way up to area management, and then one day I was like, this is just not for me anymore. As soon as I came here, I was like, this is what I always should have done.
I love working with children. I've got a real passion for helping them develop, having them relationships, seeing your families, your children coming in, the most precious little gift a parent has got in life, and you're supporting them developing. It is absolutely amazing.
The great thing about working with children is they wear their heart on their sleeve, and they're not socialised, they're not conditioned, they're not like you and I, they are their true selves, their authentic selves. But I think day to day the thing I really enjoy is being with the children and seeing them become more and more confident.
There's a lot of educated people in nurseries. We've got people with degrees, masters. Every time we do play, there's always something behind the play. So whether that be maths, it could be literacy, it could be expressive art and design.
It's been about 30 years that I've been working early years on and off. I started as an early years assistant, and then I moved up to becoming a teacher, a room leader, a deputy, a manager, and now a senior manager.
You've got a progression. Succession plan is so important, and it's recognising your staff strengths and making sure we're putting these into place.
Thank you, You're very welcome. I like to I'm the only male in here, and I think it does amazing for the children. You know, some children, they don't have a father figure in life, or they don't have a male role model.
The recruiting of young men, there needs to be support for them, not think that it's just a woman's job, you know. It isn't. It's everyone's job. Being with children, you can make a difference to their life.
You can express yourself, you can bring your interests in.
It's rewarding to see these children and to see how they've grown and how they've changed.
The amount of enjoyment I get from myself feeling that I'm doing something worthwhile is far exceeding what I've ever experienced.
If they like something that's different every day, if they like something that's challenging every day, but they like to have fun, and it's definitely the job for them.
Those first 5 years are essential to somebody's well-being as they grow into an adult. You need to do the best you possibly can by them because they are quite literally the future for all of us.
As you can see, the people who deliver that hard work at the front end and the children are the stars in this video. And again, please support the campaign, spread the word, because that's what we need to do, really raise the bar on the earliest profession and promote them as educators, not just members of staff who play with children. And that's the perception that we are trying to change here as well. So thank you for everybody who supported this. Lots of organizations, government departments have supported this, including the Royal Foundation. So we're really pleased. And the next stage is to actually launch a toolkit for employers, for nurseries, for parents, to be able to encourage more people to come into the profession. So this is a huge investment that NDNA has made for the sector on behalf of the sector. So thank you for all your support.
Good, Purnima, nice video. Like it. Is it available on your social media channels?
It is, yes, it is. And you can get it from our website and share it as well, yes.
Good, good. I just texted to my wife. So I know it's on the website, but thank you, excellent. Julie Hyde, you're going to talk about workforce development, that perspective. Welcome. Introduce yourself and please do that for us.
No problem at all, Steve. Thank you very much for inviting us here today. I'm Julie Hyde, I'm the Director of External and Regulatory Affairs at NCFE, and those of you on the call may well have cash qualifications, and cash are part of NCFE. So we are supporting the workforce in the delivery of qualifications from entry level all the way through to level 5, and specifically for the licensed practice areas of level 2 and level 3. So we support the workforce not only in the delivery of qualifications, but in their continuous professional development through Cash Alumni, which supports as a membership organisation, and also through the ongoing work that we do with many partner organisations, including NDNA and others within the sector, to ensure that we are providing what the sector needs to enable our practitioners to have the qualifications that are needed for our really significant sector. And I think the other thing I just wanted to mention as well here, Chair, is that we have had an increase year on year over the last 3 years of practitioners gaining qualifications in our sector area. In fact, over the last 3 years, there's been over 110,000 practitioners who have come out with qualifications, not just NCFE qualifications, but across the awarding sector. And yet we still have a challenge in recruitment and retention. So what this is saying is that we are attracting, but we're not keeping. And there's something there as to why that may be. So to Purnima's point there, we do need to keep ensuring that we are banging the drum for this fabulous sector, which makes such a fantastic impact on young people's lives, but also we need to ensure that we are doing the best that we can to retain those young people and people of various ages, I have to say, because some retrain to become early years practitioners. And how do we ensure that we have a workforce for the future that is sustainable? Part of that is funding related, and part of that is aspiration for progression as well. So we have to ensure that we're showing those career maps, that we're showing how people can progress within our sector area, and also that we are valuing them and recompensing them in the right way for the wonderful job that they are doing.
That's good. Thank you very much, Julie. Excellent introduction. I know Cheryl's also online. So should we just finish the onlines at the moment? Cheryl Hadland is known to many of you from Top Stay Nurseries. Cheryl.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm very honoured. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. So it was a lovely positive video. Thank you, Purnima. But I think our major issue is staff turnover. I've seen it hit 36% now, which is absolutely astronomical, more than double what I've seen in past years. I've got one nursery, can't open because it's not got enough staff. I've got many nurseries where we can't take children that are on the waiting list because we don't have enough staff. So why don't we? Do they hate working for me? No, it's not that. It's just that with the cost of living the way it is, electricity prices the way it is, it's really pushed people to go and work where they can earn more money. So to give you some data on that, by comparisons, early years pay rates are between 18,000 and 28,000, obviously less for apprentices. School teachers start at 28,000 and go up to 43,000. Nurses start at 20,000, they go up to 109,000. Retail, 26 to 32.5. The national average wage is 31,000. So our people can get better paid jobs elsewhere, even though they love working for us and love working for the children, and many of them have a real calling. Many have degrees and could get work in schools. I've got one particular manager, she's a wonderful practitioner. She chose to work in the early years, even though she had to take a pay dip to get it. But it's not fair. We're actually taking advantage of people with the skills, the education, the talent, and the desire to work with small children by not valuing them. Now, I'm sure you could say, well, can't the companies pay more? Well, no, we can't, because we're being clobbered with business rates at the moment. Your average nursery is paying around 14,000 in business rates. Some, though, are way up in the 60, 70, 80,000 pounds. We don't get any refunds like public schools like Eton do, or most schools, they get refunds, either because they're a charity or something similar. So it's massive. If we could be allowed not to pay business rates, that equates to, for us, about 500 odd pounds per member of staff. Now that might not sound like a lot to you, but when you're on 18,000 a year, that is a lot. So that would be really great. And of course, our funding is woefully inadequate. We get a fraction of what schools get, the 380 schools, get around, £8 an hour, where we get £4, because it's too low in the first place. B, it's never been allowed to make up for minimum wage increases, 21% of those recently. And we know that the DFE claimed, in 2017 that they were underpaying us by £2 an hour. And that's just getting worse and worse. So the poor parents are being clobbered for the difference in their under threes who aren't funded, and also in any charges if they've got jobs that are over between 11 and 15 hours a week. So yes, it's very expensive for parents. Staff are being underpaid. My company made a loss this last year. There is no money left in the sector. If I was all for profit, I would have shut 10 of my nurseries in the last few months because they are losing so much. I can't even compensate with the ones that are in good areas. So we are on our knees, and we've been saying this for years, but it's absolutely got to crisis point. Please, can we have some help? I better stop there before I get too upset.
Thank you, Cheryl. I have written an article today which is on the Conservative Home website, which is very well read by parliamentarians, which is titled "Failing to Fund Childcare Properly Puts This Country at a Growth Disadvantage." Snappy title, I'll grant you. But anyway, it says in many ways what you you just said, Cheryl. And in fact, could the Secretariat just tweet that onto our social media platforms now, which would be really good. Anyway, and then just with the introductions, Catherine McLeod from Dingley's Promise. Do you want to introduce yourself? You have to speak quite loud.
Okay, I'm going to shout from a distance. I'm here in this room. So I'm Catherine McLeod. I'm the Chief Executive of Dingley's Promise, and we support children with SEND in the early years. So this year's our 40th anniversary, so it's our birthday, and we work currently in 4 specialist settings in the south, providing sessions for children and support for families. We also have a national training programme. We're working across the country to deliver training to mainstream nurseries on support for children with SEND inclusively. And we also work with local authorities and government MPs on lobbying and sort of moving things forward for change. And just one very small point, I think all of what I've heard is very, very true. I think sometimes what is forgotten is that when there is an issue with sufficiency, it's often the children with SEND who get turned away first. So at the moment, what we're seeing is a big rise in exclusion of children with SEND in the early years, which obviously has an impact on their life outcomes, has an impact on how much education costs later, and also has a massive impact on families who then have to care for their children rather than maybe be able to go back to work. So for us at the moment, it's a really, really worrying time seeing more exclusion than there's been for some time, not about training, but literally about whether there are staff in settings to support those children.
Okay, that's good. Thank you very much. There's some questions here that I just want to go through and just ask a few of you different questions, which people will be interested to listen to. Cheryl, I guess you would be best to start with this based on what you said. So, you know, some could say, well, look, the sector's already had more money as part of the spending review through last November. So therefore, why do you need more? Now we know the answer to that in this room, but obviously there are people who are watching, maybe new to the sector, who are trying to learn about it, who will watch this back, because you'll be able to watch this back on our social media channels afterwards. Cheryl, how would you encompass the answer to that question?
The basics are that we have to be able to pay our staff more. I mean, the nurses are on strike when they're paid much more than the earlier sector are. The extra funding that was sent in October, much appreciated, but not by my organisation, because they were wanting to put mentors and coaches in, which was attracting my top end staff away from being on the floor and managing children. And we don't need that. What we need is the rate per child to go up. And this dodging around by putting a small fraction somewhere else really doesn't help. And we're also in the position where if we're already really stretched for funding, I can't then also look after a child with SEND on a 1-to-8 ratio when people are already absolutely at their limit. Because we've got people leaving because there's too much stress because they're being asked to stay late and things like that. Never mind if you've got to do some 1-to-1 at the same time as looking after the 8 children you have. So the money's going in the wrong direction, and I don't know why. Why would they send all that money to mentoring and coaching? I mean, we had something where they wanted to tell us how to run our businesses better. Do you know what? I've been running a business for 45 years. That we don't need. We're doing absolutely everything we can to keep our costs as low as possibly can. I mean, fortunately, I've been on it for a while, so I've put solar panels on, and some of my nurseries have got 0 electricity bill. But the ones that don't, we're having to pay 100% more, potentially 300% more in April. Absolutely terrifying.
It's a very good point you made. Nurses are paid a lot more than early years workers, and they're outside on strike at the moment. Well, not literally at the moment, but you know what I mean. Do you think the early years workforce is a little bit too genteel and a bit underrepresented in terms of trade union activity?
Well, I do think we're very gentle. We're very nice people. We're responsive to children who don't even speak. If my team go on strike, we just shut. We go bust. Whereas if the NHS staff go on strike, well, the NHS is not going to actually close its doors. So I think, when people work in the private sector, they're a bit more aware of what the impact would be on the owners. And we're actually going to go employee ownership in April anyway. So they'll be striking against themselves almost if they do that.
Yeah.
And a lot of people in the early years are running charities and community arrangements, and we're there because we believe in looking after our own children and our community's children. So no, we're not about to go on strike, and I'm not saying the nurses don't believe that. Of course they do, but they have the security of knowing the NHS is not going to be allowed to go completely bust, whereas we can, and we are. I mean, 5,000 have gone down this year already. And there will be many more come April. I just don't know how we can keep all ours open. I really don't.
Yeah. Purnima, you've got your hand up. By the way, there's 117 people on the online taking part. We will take some questions from the floor, as it were. If you want to do that, put your hand up. Raise your hand, and Oliver in the room will try and spot that and then bring them up so I can see them. So Claire Kenyon, we'll come to you at some point. So you put your hand up in a physical sense. You raise your hand by clicking that button. Anyway, Purnima, what was you want to add on this?
Yeah, I just want to put some context into this, Chair. 65% of the PVI sector actually represents 65% of the earlier sector. They actually employ 72% of the whole of the earliest workforce, and they deliver 85% of the total childcare places. These are government figures, not our figures. But I think, when we talk about funding, the government announced £20 million extra funding. But, when we say that, is the funding enough? Because the actual spending review settlement was way before the cost of living crisis started, way before the energy crisis started, way before the kind of inflation hit 10%. So in reality, when the government actually announced £20 million extra support for early years, in comparison, the school's support was £2.3 billion. So when the government says that earliest is a priority, we absolutely want to look at earliest as the starting point. In fact, the funding is actually not matching those words. So that funding equates to about 1.1% uplift if you take the 3.7 billion total budget. And so what we're talking about is at the local authority level, when you add all the other funding, you're talking about 3.4% in their earliest hourly raise with a minimum floor level of 1%. So when it reaches local authorities, the amount of funding that providers are going to get, some local authorities have already announced that they're not going to get any increases because of the challenges within their budget. So that's the kind of challenges that the sector is facing. Yeah. So the chronic underfunding started years ago, and I think that never caught up with it.
Okay, thanks. Could you bring in some people who've got their hands up, because it's easier for you to select them and then say which, because I can't select them.
Of course,
yeah. You've got control.
Well, first on my list is Emma Coomer.
Emma.
Hi there. Hi. Now, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Lovely. Right. I want to go back a little bit to the beginning of this meeting when we heard about the over 50s, and obviously government is interested in, as they should be, in revenue coming in and the loss of taxes from over 50s not working. I'm afraid that's really quite concerning in the sense that there's a much bigger problem ahead. There are going to be millions wiped off our budget in terms of income from families, parents of children who will not be able to work because they will not be able to find childcare. Nurseries are getting to the point where they're unsustainable. And there's going to be a huge issue in terms of parents not being able to find any childcare whatsoever. And I know the government kind of has this in their mind, and they're thinking, oh, we'll get those 2-year-olds into school. Forget it. That will cost more than actually funding us correctly. And lastly, I'd like to say, look at the Canadian model, where they've just done a huge billions and billions into early years, and they've done the number crunching, and they know that for every dollar they put into early years, the taxpayer and the coffers will get almost double that back within a few years. It just, how early years is underfunded makes no sense. Can't understand it. It's not even good from an economic point of view, because that money comes back into the coffers, let alone the development of children and the life that's ahead of them and contributions to communities and families. I'll go on for hours about it, so I'll have to stop there, but thank you.
Good point, well made. I think Therese Villiers' point was not, these are not mutually exclusive. Therese Villiers well aware of the threat to the sector, which is why she's decided to become an officer of the group, and she's also chairs the Maintain Nurseries group here in Parliament. But you know, that doesn't mean that there isn't a workforce challenge with the over 50s, because that was the point she was making.
I think I was just trying to say that's the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah,
There's going to be something much bigger coming up.
Obviously, we agree in this group, but I mean, it wasn't. She wasn't saying to do one thing at the exclusivity of the other.
That's fair enough.
Further comment.
Thank you.
Melanie Mansfield.
Yes. For years. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. For years, as has already been mentioned, we've been arguing for investment in the early years for the very reasons that the video showed us this morning, and the investment has not increased, it's decreased. We've had hundreds of nursery schools and early years settings closing over the last few years. And unless the government recognises that investing in the early years, as has just been said, saves money later on, we will not. Why aren't the children in the early years funded in the same way as older children, and staff in particularly paid properly? It's undermining and it's derogatory to pay people who work with in the most important years of a child's life so badly. And we believe that we should continue early years up to age 7 anyway, as in 88% of other countries. Why do we finish early years education and care at 5? It should be 7. And we have to look at what's happening in other countries, because in other countries, early years provision is free, paid for by the government. And we need to have a complete reform of what's happening in the early years in this country with a massive investment. I know the situation nationally is not good, but until any government admits or agrees that investment in the early years are the most important years, we're not going to see any change. And as has already been said, but it'll be said again and again, there will be no sector left soon, because there are closures going on and they cannot survive.
Amelia, when you say
it's a disaster for this country, because it determines the life chances of children, and we need to focus totally on those early years.
Melian, when you say we believe, who is we? What do you?
Well, I'm involved. I chair an organisation called the Early Childhood Forum, which has been in existence for 30 years. We have member organisations across the country, and we've been arguing this for a very long time, but not much has changed. In fact, it's got considerably worse. And I think the other speakers who are on the screen anyway agree.
Okay, let's bring in Claire next door. Hello, Claire. Unmute and carry on.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Can.
Okay, so I'm Claire Kenyon. I am representing early years equality. Some of you may have seen the work that we're doing. We've been a lot on CNLF, Day Nursery Owners Hub. We're actually having a march in March. If you don't know about it, we'd love you to join us. We're trying to raise awareness. Our focus really is on making sure that we put the child back in the centre of this discussion. At the moment, we've gone very off-piste. We're talking about childcare, which is, in my view, a service for parents. It is not early years education for children. So we're trying to bring the focus back on what the children need, which is early childhood education and care. I feel that the childcare narrative is getting bigger and is definitely contributing to the undervaluation of early years, because it is considered, sadly, women's work, and it doesn't help our arguments. I think the time that the government moved away from funding early years education and change it to free childcare was the beginning of the end, really, for everything that we see now. Anyway, so I just wanted to draw attention to our march. I hope as many of you can make it, if anyone wants to help us, because we are just a few volunteers trying to organise something to bring attention to our plight. We'd be really grateful. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, let's go back then to our guests. So Catherine, this is probably one for you. What would you, many councils don't have enough childcare spaces, especially for the children that you speak about, SEND children. What would you like to see done to improve that availability?
I think 5 years ago, we were very much focused on training and support and making sure mainstream settings had those skills to be able to support children. And I do think over the past, certainly the past 5 years, it has got a lot better. However, I feel like we've gone over the tipping point now. So we're now in a situation where the settings actually can't support as many children with SEND as they want to because of resource issues. And so in the past, I would have said it's about training, it's about development, it's about all this side of things. But actually, I think where we are now, it has moved over into the fact that we've got settings who desperately want to support children, who have supported children really well in the past, but who are literally saying, we don't have the staff, we don't have the capacity. And I've never been in a situation where I've heard so many settings saying, we're not going to be accepting children with SEND at the moment. So unfortunately, I'd love to have, there are small ways you can tweak. We absolutely, there should be funding for paperwork time, because certainly with children with SEND, after the changes to the EYFS, there's a much bigger demand now on, in comparison to all the other children, there's a much bigger demand on paperwork for children with SEND, because the change is good to move practitioners away from filling in lots of paperwork, but they still do need to for children with SEND in many cases. So that is a real difference that's causing settings to realise that actually they don't have the money to have staff filling in that paperwork for the children. So that needs funding. Ideally, children under 2 should also be able to access inclusion funding. At the moment, they can't. But these are all practical steps, but I do feel like, in a way, it's tinkering with bits around the edge, when in reality, we need fully staffed settings who have enough people in ratio to be able to support inclusively and run really high quality settings.
Yeah, it's not that there's a shortage of people wanting to do it, it's just a shortage of people being able to afford to do it, right?
Yeah.
It's not that we have a workforce shortage, we don't have enough radiographers in the NHS, but we have enough people that want to do this.
There's lots of people have the passion for it, and I think again the last couple of years you've seen the people with the passion starting to leave as well, simply saying, I cannot pay the bills, I cannot put food on the table for my own family, I'm going to work in Lidl or I'm going to work in an office because what I want to do, what's my passion, it simply can't support my life.
Yeah, passion don't pay.
No.
Can I ask those on the call, and I'll ask Julie to comment on this first. I can only see certain numbers of people on the call, so I'm hoping you can see the wider picture of people who put their hands up, instead of, because I can just see the ones that are on the top.
The ones that put their hands up.
What do you want to see come out of those of you who don't know, the Education Select Committee, chaired by Robin Walker as the MP for Worcester, a new chair of the Education Committee, has just announced an inquiry into childcare in early years, which we've been lobbying for a while, and I've been lobbying him since he took over as chair. I chair the Health Committee, by the way. So
he attended our last meeting, Chair. That's probably what convinced him to go.
Well, yeah. Anyway, he's agreed to do that, and they've launched that inquiry. What do we want to see come out of that inquiry, Julie?
It's a really good question. From our perspective, a revised workforce strategy is really long overdue. I think the last one was in 2017. So if we're looking at having a sustainable workforce that meets the needs of the sector, then we have to ensure that we have an up-to-date strategy to be able to do that. That means that we have to engage with the sector for that to be the case. In the UK, research shows that our government invests less per child than Estonia, Lithuania, and Slovenia. We know how much the first 5 years count for our children. So this is the stage where we should be investing in their futures. So that has to be of paramount importance, and a strategic plan to enable the workforce to do that is critical.
Yeah, there's so many similarities. I mean, in the healthcare world that I spend a lot of my time in, you know, we're also waiting for a workforce plan in that. But the key to that one is that it's going to be independently verified, as opposed to rated by NHS England and by the government. It'll be independently verified, and it's a critical thing. And I suggest that we should push the Education Select Committee to include that in their recommendations, because if you ask the NHS how many staff they need, they'll tell you how many they can afford, which is a very different question. And I suspect it would be the same in this world. So we should ask for independent verification of this. You know, maybe I don't know, the Children's Commissioner or could do that, but we should be asking that. Anyway, anybody else? Cheryl, Education Select Committee inquiry.
Yeah, I would just say that our staffing isn't worked out on how many we would, you know, we could afford, because obviously we have more staff than we can afford now. But the ratios are such that one has to have a member of staff for every 3 babies. You know, there's nothing you can do about that. But of course, you're often not running at 1 to 3 first thing in the morning. If I'm open in time for a nurse shift at 6 in the morning, then we don't necessarily run at 1 to 3 all the time.
Yeah.
So that needs to be considered. But you basically need to double the rate that's being paid now for 3 and 4-year-olds. And then it will be up to what they're paying in schools, and we can pay for more graduates and hope to retain them. So it's pretty straightforward from my point of view. Double funding, stop the business rates.
Yeah, so Oliver just reminded me that a lot of these issues, you know, we're not just talking to ourselves here at this meeting and agreeing with each other. We are seeing the Minister in a few weeks' time, and I'm seeing the Chancellor tomorrow, actually, about various things, but I will be, because he's asking for advice and opinions he's not short of, obviously, ahead of the budget in the spring. So I will be taking my opportunity to land this with him. Purnima?
I think I'm a bit more greedier than that, Steve. I think, you know, we've just submitted our evidence and there's a lot more, I think, the sector needs. But I think the most important thing here, over the years, we've been sticking plasters in a system that is absolutely not fit for purpose. So we need to really look at a fully independent, comprehensive review of early education and childcare. We need to redefine the purpose of that. You know, what is it for? Is it for child development? Is it to support parents to get back into work? And most importantly, what are the resources needed to deliver that high quality? And how can we support parents to be able to wade through the different funding systems that we have, which is equally confusing for everybody? But most importantly, like Julie mentioned, the workforce, we need a real strategy. I think, you know, we really need a real focus, vision, and direction and leadership to be able to come up with a strategy that is not only fit for this century, but equally that delivers the best outcomes for all children and empowers parents, and most importantly, saves money in the long run. And there is hard evidence to prove that every penny invested in early years saves absolutely billions in later life. And I think the most important thing also is that will support the economic growth, supporting parents in the long term. That's what we're looking for from the inquiry, for a comprehensive review of the system.
What's interesting, because what governments are looking for is to ease the cost of living pressures, you know, which is why they came up with, it was the right question, they came up with the wrong answer on messing with our ratios. And obviously, you know, this group, one of its great successes last year was that, you know, we were very, well, we were successful, in fact, speak for themselves, in that we managed to adopt it. And obviously, Prime Minister has reversed that, as well as many other things of his predecessor, thank goodness. But the government are looking to to save parents cost. I thought it was Finland, but I was wrong. I was saying at the AGM earlier, Estonia, where full-time childcare costs £15 a week. How are they managing that, Purnima? How are they managing that?
Well, absolutely. I think we begs the question, if Estonia can manage to do this, why can't UK manage to do that? Why can't we do it here? I think this is the question that we need to ask ourselves, because, you know, where should the investment go? And at different stages of a child's life, and you mentioned about the school funding and earliest funding, school pupil premium, for example, compared to the earliest pupil premium, which is £388, and then jumps up to £1,200, £1,300 when a child starts school. So I think that the priorities need to be really realigned as part of that review. And I think that's really important, because, you know, the investment, all the investment the government says that they're putting into early years is actually not reaching providers, not reaching those families who desperately need the most, because the Audit Commission's report actually highlights where children are not using the 2-year-old offer are in the most disadvantaged communities. And those are the children who desperately need that high quality care. And
I think I'm right in saying in our submission to the Education Committee, we said about the money going to councils to then go to providers, and you know, being open to look at that changing, because there are councils that hold back. I mean, I'm afraid Hampshire, which is one of the area that I represent, hold back, and this is not a good situation. So we will be pressing that. Look, I'm going to probably close the meeting now, if that's okay. I have to be somewhere else at 3 o'clock. Anybody else online who had their hand up, Oliver?
No, just
Good. Okay.
So
Right.
can I make just one brief point before we finish?
Yes,
my story.
Yeah, you know how to do it.
The Prime Minister of the story is Kasia Kallas, a mother. And I wonder if that's a reason why they've got such a progressive childcare policy. Not that I'm old, but I imagine if that might be a driving force in the matter.
Well, I think that's a brilliant point on which to finish. Said with a bright smile and spot on, I'm sure. So listen, thank you very much to everybody for taking part. Catherine, Judy, Purnima, and Cheryl in particular. Thanks for the 120 people at one point we had who were participants who were online. You will be able to review this for those who are currently at the sharp end, delivering early years, who don't have time to sit and watch Zoom call this time on a Tuesday afternoon. Please point them to our socials, because at some point, probably later on, probably certainly by the morning, you'll be able to review this. And we want your input on the comments ahead of our meeting with the Minister next week. So, you know, we've got a lot to do. We had a good year last year. We've made our presence felt with the ministers. I say that plural because there were so many of them. Hopefully we'll have the same one throughout this year, who is obviously I'm seeing next week, Claire Coutinho. So thanks very much for everybody. Have a good year, and it's not long till half term. So for those who get half term, it's not long till the break. Anyway, thanks very much for your ongoing support. Meeting closed.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, everybody.